Exciting news, you guys! Wild Ideas Worth Living is now available on YouTube. You can find our latest episodes uploaded there weekly, plus video clips with some of our guests that give you a peek behind the scenes. Check out all of the content at youtube.com/REI. Sarah Swallow is a professional adventure cyclist, but she doesn't compete in races and you won't see her name on the fastest known time list. Instead, Sarah is a full-time sponsored athlete who creates bikepacking routes around the country.
It's important for there to be people to develop these routes, that makes riding bikes or going on hikes more accessible to people that just don't have the time to do the research or to develop their own route.
When Sarah goes out to create a route, she takes the history, geography, and the biodiversity of an area into account. She also avoids car traffic as much as possible by sending riders on dirt and gravel roads. Her routes are often hundreds of miles long and lead riders past historical sites, landmarks, and diverse landscapes. In 2019, Sarah took her route crafting to the next level when she created a cycling and conservation event called Ruta del Jefe. Through all of her work, Sarah has been able to fuse together her most important values: to be good to the earth, its people, and of course, to have fun along the way. I'm Shelby Stanger, and this is Wild Ideas Worth Living, an REI Co-op Studios production brought to you by Capital One. Sarah Swallow, welcome to Wild Ideas Worth Living.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Our producer, Jenny, found you, and I was like, who is this girl? How did I not know about her? And you've been doing this kind of stuff since 2015. But how did you discover cycling? When was the first time you fell in love with it?
Yeah, so I had kind of a strange entry into cycling. I actually started working with bicycles before I started riding bicycles myself. My family moved to Ohio when I was 11 or 12. And around that time, I'm one of 6 kids. So my parents were like, wow, if you want to buy anything that you want, you have to get a job and pay for it yourself. So I got a job with a family friend at the Loveland Bike and Skate Rental. And it was on the Little Miami Bike Trail, which is a paved bike path that goes from Cincinnati to Cleveland, Ohio. So I started renting bikes at this bike rental when I was 12. And I actually ended up working there for 8 years and, started to manage the rental. And I got a job at the local bike shop after the rental job was done. And once I graduated from high school, my dad had started riding and he, put me on my mom's bike one day and we went out for a 20 or 30 mile road ride. And I was like, dang, I really like this. I like this form of fitness. It's low impact. You get to see places. And I kind of dove in head first after that because for me, I always kind of resented moving from California to Ohio. There's not very many public lands or parks or wild spaces in Ohio that I had experienced in California. And so the bicycle kind of allowed me to see more of these wild spaces in Ohio. And yeah, it really helped me kind of appreciate Ohio and learn to love it. So that's kind of how I got into it.
Wait, so what number are you in terms of kid in your family? Are you middle?
I'm third. Yeah, I'm middle. Yeah. I'm classic middle child, even though there's 3 middle children in this family, but I'm your classic middle child, confused and problematic in high school and, middle school. But the bike really straightened me out for sure.
So how did you go from I love cycling, this is my thing, to then making it as a career?
Yeah. So I worked in bike shops, I was riding, and the bike shop that I was working at, I worked there for another 7 years, and they were closing, and I was managing that shop at the time. And, my partner at the time and I were just we're going to open our own shop in the same spot. So that shop closed and we opened in a quarter of the space. So it was a smaller shop. But we were in a location that had existed, a bike shop had existed for 20 years. So, we had an instant following, but I don't own a bike shop anymore. So, how did I make that transition? What happened was I was using, early days Instagram to promote, the custom bikes that we were building, the products that we were selling, and also hosting gravel rides, kind of early days with gravel riding. And I was taking people out to Shawnee State Forest, and we were doing group gravel rides with groups of people that had never ridden gravel. They're just like cyclocross, mountain bike, or road. Those are your only options at the time. So I was just promoting through Instagram, and somehow Specialized Bicycles got wind of me, and they were building their adventure dispatch team at the time, which was a group of like 5 or 6 of us, and I was one of them. And so when they offered me that sponsorship, it was a significant sponsorship. And so I was like, I'm going to take this opportunity and do an adventure of a lifetime. And so we closed the bike shop for 3 months with the full expectation that we would come back and open it. But we used that time and we rode our bikes from east to west the United States on dirt roads, following a dual sport motorcycle route. And at the time, we were the first cyclists to do that. So that changed my life.
Before that cross-country ride in 2015, Sarah had only bike-packed a handful of times, and she'd never been on the road for more than 7 days in a row. But on this trip, she rode 5,000 miles in less than 3 months. Along the way, she was exposed to so many different kinds of people living different lifestyles than her own. By the time she reached the West Coast, she just wanted to keep riding. Sarah realized she had spent so much time helping other people with their bike adventures, but she hadn't been feeding the adventure in herself. She decided to close her business and pursue the wild idea of cycling full-time. So in this world of like gravel riding and just kind of being like, I guess like because you don't compete, do you?
No, I don't. No, I'm a non-competitive.
Yeah, in surfing, we'd call you a free rider. I don't know what they call that in cycling, but like you seem like you're one of the first females to do this.
Yeah, in cycling, we don't really have a term for this kind of thing, I guess. I just kind of started calling myself an adventure cyclist because it seemed like it represented what I do. But I really feel like I ride for the love of it. I ride to, see the world and experience life around me and like get in touch with myself. And I like to explore routes, see new places, and kind of create my own path.
That's really cool. And something that we haven't really talked about on this podcast. So just going back to the shop, in 2011, you opened that bike shop in Ohio. And then did you eventually just kind of close it while you became this adventure cyclist?
Right. Yeah. We came back to Ohio and ended up, selling all the rest of the inventory and closing that shop and committing full time to this dream. And yeah, there was a few times I almost got sucked back in to working at other shops because that's, what I knew. But I kept coming back to the dream and being like, no, I'm going to make this happen. And so I started working towards diversifying my income through, writing stories for magazines or just developing relationships with other brands. I just kind of used the template that I had kind of learned from with working with Specialized and started applying that with other brands.
Okay, I want to touch briefly on this because I think it's interesting, because I think a big obstacle that keeps a lot of people who listen to this podcast from pursuing their wild ideas like finances and like how to make it work. And I cobbled together my career doing just that, writing for magazines, like pitching people, doing PR, like little this, that, and that. But I went to school for journalism. But I looked at your content. It's really fun. It's irreverent. It's professional. But it's cool and unique and it's artsy and it seems like you can do video, you can shoot. Are you self-taught? Did you learn this in school? Like, talk to me about this.
Yeah, so I have a degree in history. So I learned how to write from that. And that's, yeah, and I loved it. I'm so grateful for that degree because at the time I was like, I'm out of here. But it really was something that fundamentally impacted, I think, my ability to write and articulate. And also, even articulating in emails as pitches and stuff like that. But in terms of photo and video, I'm all self-taught. I'm like, as a kid, I hated getting my picture taken. And, I still kind of struggle with it a little bit. So it's like, I don't necessarily like to be in the limelight. I like to, document and do the videos. But over the years now, it's, my brands want content of me. So I've got to put myself out there. So it's all self-taught. I'm just learning. And I've had times in my life where I do struggle with social media. So when that happens, I have to just like take a step back and just focus on like, I'm just doing this for fun. Like whatever it is, just get it out and I just don't force it, because once you start forcing it, it's like, it's never going to happen, or it's just, people can see through that kind of thing. So I just try to keep it fun and light for me in order to make it sustainable for me to keep doing.
Sarah's writing is authentic and relatable. It describes what it's like to be out there on the road in all of its glory and upsets. For example, one of her posts on Instagram is an itemized list of events from a recent ride she did in Baja California. In it, she casually mentions some sketchy boat rides, tons of wildlife sightings, a fisherman she met on the way, and the fact that she ran out of water. It's comedic and lighthearted while sharing the realities of adventure. Stuff goes wrong, but that's part of what makes it memorable. When we come back, Sarah talks about how she started creating bikepacking routes, what the process is like, and her cycling event, Ruta del Jefe. Hey Wild Ideas listeners, I have good news. REI and Capital One have partnered together to support the shared mission of creating a more equitable outdoors. Through the REI Co-op MasterCard program, Capital One and REI have donated $3 million to the REI Cooperative Action Fund. That donation supports more than 200 nonprofit organizations across the country working to create a more equitable outdoors for everyone. If you want to find REI Fund grantees in your community and learn more about the amazing work they're doing, visit reifund.org/grantees. That's reifund.org/grantees. And to learn more about the REI Co-op MasterCard program, go to rei.com/MasterCard-podcast. That's rei.com/MasterCard-podcast. We'll include both links in the show notes. Terms apply. Over the years, I've learned how important hydration is in my running and surfing. It's the key to helping my body move, recover, and just have a good time when I'm adventuring outside. Things go even better when I'm well hydrated before I even get out there. Noon Hydration doesn't want you to wait to hydrate. They want you to start your adventure hydrated. Noon Sport Hydration tablets hydrate better than water alone. Just drop them in your water, dissolve, and enjoy. They contain 5 essential electrolytes and come in crisp and refreshing flavors like strawberry lemonade and lemon lime. They also have non-GMO, vegan, and gluten-free ingredients and contain 90% less sugar than the leading electrolyte drink mix. Noon hydrates you more, so you can do more, go further, and recover faster. That means you can have a heck of a lot more fun. If you're interested in giving Noon Hydration a try, head into your local REI store before your next adventure or purchase at rei.com. Anything can happen after noon. Happy hydrating! Hey everyone! Last year I had the honor of interviewing Evelyn Escobar, who is the founder of Hike Club, a decolonial women's outdoor collective. I love that Hike Club is creating ways for women to connect outside, which is why I'm excited to share that the North Face and Hike Club have teamed up to make a fun and functional women's hike collection. The pieces are amazing. Together, the North Face and Hike Club are working to celebrate inclusive exploration and expand the narrative around the outdoors, something I know Wild Ideas listeners can get behind. This collab is for REI Co-op members and is officially available now through May 31st, while supplies last. Grab this limited edition collab before it's gone. You can find the collection at rei.com and in select stores. Again, that's rei.com and in select stores across the U.S. After closing her bike shop in 2015, adventure cyclist Sarah Swallow decided to hit the road and ride as much as she could. She made a living writing stories for cycling publications, as well as with sponsored social media posts. As she was building a career as a freelancer, Sarah started creating bikepacking routes for others to follow. You develop routes, which is a fascinating, wild idea. And I'm just curious how you got into creating this and what it entails.
Yeah. So I got into route making. I think the thing that started it all was just being led by other people on just ridiculous rides. And I'll be like, what are we doing out here? And, I might be throwing my dad under the bus a little bit, but he was the first one for sure. And I'd just be like, why are we doing this? Why are we riding on this busy road? Or why are we riding this hill this way? And so one year for Christmas, he gave me an atlas of Ohio. And I was like, oh my gosh, there are so many roads. And this map shows like, okay, this road is this big and this road is this big. And so I just started tracing on a map and highlighting on a map and making my own cue sheets and going out and riding them. And there's just something about going from the map to the real thing and being just surprised by every turn around the corner. So I just fell in love with kind of making my own routes. And I also feel like it's kind of a art form. That might not be the proper word for it, but it is.
That's
you kind of
okay,
like cultivating an experience. Yeah. And like the flow of a ride and making it a certain level of difficulty, but allowing it to relent or to, have an easy section after the difficulty section and making sure that it's just not like a total sufferfest and has the right kind of flow. I really enjoy making routes like that because I think that more people would get into cycling if they were riding good routes and riding them the proper way. And so that really helped me get out and ride more, is to just make my own routes. It does take a little bit more time, and I don't always just ride my routes. I like, when I travel internationally, I like to ride other people's routes just because there's a whole nother level of language and culture that you have to navigate.
So what's your process like for making a brand new route?
Early days, it was just a total crapshoot. I would go out and, ride this big long road and hit a dead end, and you have to ride out, or you come to a gate and it's private and, ride backwards. So it takes a lot of time to really figure out what works and what doesn't. My process is these days I start with like a satellite map so that I can see the ground, so I can kind of tell which roads are dirt and which roads are paved, and then I can kind of tell if they are connecting or not. And as I am like drawing the lines of the route, I'm keeping an eye out for rivers, creeks, any stores or resupply points, towns. And I'll kind of mark all those places as well as, points of interest, so that when I go out and do the route, I know the distance between water resupply or the distance between when I'm going to be able to get food resupplied, or where, maybe the good spots look like for camping, like in terms of this segment is going to be private land, and then after this segment, it's going to be all public land. This is where the stores are, the town, or this is if I need to get like a bus for some reason, like this town has a bus and an ATM or a hotel, like in case of something happening. So I try to build all that into my routes as well. And when I publish the routes, we include all that information. But once I have all that information, I kind of create a little cheat sheet for myself. So I download the route on my phone. I upload the route onto a GPS device. For developing routes, I usually ride a mountain bike with, substantial tires, either 2.5-inch or 3-inch tires, so that if I'm hitting sand, I'm be okay. If I'm hitting dirt roads, it's fine.
Sarah will often ride a route 7 or 8 times before publishing it on platforms like bikepacking.com, Ride with GPS, and Lonely Planet. She has published around 50 routes, and many of those are in the Southwest. Most recently, Sarah has worked on creating a series of routes in Mexico, where she hosts a cycling and advocacy event called Ruta del Jefe. The event involves group bike rides and really cool workshops, like a bird walk, a mud sculpting class, and a legal immigration simulation. You also have this event called Ruta del Jefe, And I speak a little Spanish. Jefe means boss, so route of the boss. Who is the boss? What is this event?
So El Jefe is the name of a jaguar that used to have an established habitat in the Santa Rita Mountains. And he was in the Santa Rita Mountains from 2011 to 2015. It was the first jaguar that had migrated into Arizona in over like 20 or 30 years. You know, jaguars used to exist all the way up to like the Grand Canyon, but, you know, they were threatened because of habitat loss and urbanization, and also ranchers killing them for killing their cattle. And so jaguars hadn't been seen in southern Arizona for quite a long time, but El Jefe showed up. He established habitat in the Santa Rita Mountains, and then he left, or no one knew where he went. You know, after 2015, he was never spotted again. So I named my event after El Jefe, the jaguar, and called it the Route of the Boss, because it is such a hard ride. It's 135 miles on dirt roads and, you know, rugged terrain, and it circumnavigates his former habitat. What's really cool about the way this has all transpired is that just recently in 2022, I made the decision to move the event to Sonora, Mexico, to this other conservation area called Cuenca Los Ojos. And that same year, El Jefe was spotted in Sonora, Mexico, alive and well. And he's now known to be the oldest living jaguar that they are aware of. So just like El Jefe kind of transcends and migrates through borders, Ruta del Jefe is doing that as well. So I feel very connected to, the jaguar story. I think it's just very interesting.
Well, jaguars, like, just as an animal, as just a symbol, they're really cool. I just watched a video on Instagram of like a jaguar killing an alligator and like leaping. I was just like, what? A caiman, but insane, which is like the brother of an alligator or crocodile. Okay, so I'm guessing you created this new route when you moved it down to Mexico.
Yeah, so my big focus over the last year and a half has been the routes at Cuenca Los Ojos in Sonora, Mexico. I had to develop those routes from scratch, and, you know, that place had not ever seen bicycles. You know, bicycles had never ridden there. It's always been closed to the public. And so to develop those routes, like the first time I went down there, it was after a huge monsoon season in 2022, and all the routes were like covered in like neck length grass and, you know, cat claw, you know, so I was pretty much hiking with my bike for most of these routes in early developmental stages. And once I established like, oh, okay, these roads actually flow pretty nicely despite all this, you know, overgrown grass and cat claw, I told Cuenca Los Ojos, I advised them on which roads to, you know, invest in clearing, just, you know, mowing and making sure they're cleared.
So if I'm on the Ruta del Jefe ride, what are like a few things I might see? And what do I do if I see El Jefe?
You should just like enjoy it, because that's amazing. And I would be so jealous if you did see a jaguar at Ruta del Jefe. Super jealous. But yeah, you just stop and witness and just be in awe. They are not going after you. They're not interested in eating you or anything like that. You just cross paths. You just give them the space and let them be. It is possible you could see a beaver at Ruta del Jefe. There are lots of beaver dams along this canyon that all the routes start on. So you actually are going to be riding through. The beaver dams have been built up so much that there's a lot of built up water in some spaces. So riders are going to be riding through like 20 creek crossings right in the beginning of the route. Ruta del Jefe is kind of an experiment. So Cuenca Los Ojos right now are exploring whether or not they want to invest more in ecotourism through the form of adventure cycling and bikepacking. And so Ruta del Jefe is the first test. So assuming all goes well, we'll continue to host Ruta del Jefe there, but also explore developing bikepacking routes in this region.
If you're interested in learning more about Sarah's adventures, check her out on Instagram at Sarah J. Swallow. That's SarahJ JSWALLOW. If you want to learn more about Ruta del Jefe, check out their website at rutadeljefe.com. That's RUTADELJEFE.com. If you liked this episode, check out our episode with the bicycle nomad Eric Cedeno. We'll link to it in the show notes. Wild Ideas Worth Living is part of the REI Podcast Network. It's hosted by me, Shelby Stanger, produced by Annie Fassler, Sylvia Thomas, and Sam Piers-Nitzberg of Puddle Creative. Our senior producers are Jenny Barber and Hannah Boyd. Our executive producers are Paolo Motola and Joe Crosby. As always, we love it when you follow the show, take time to rate it, and write a review wherever you listen. And remember, some of the best adventures happen when you follow your wildest ideas.